Words of Wisdom with Adam Carriker.
So is cough syrup like a Vicodin for a sports announcer?
And with that conundrum, we welcome you to Fourth and Pain, the only pro wrestling show to be hosted by an NFL player and a weight loss champion. He is the Redskins defensive end, Adam Carriker. I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Fourth and Pain and online, fourthandpain.com. Adam, yesterday we talked about pro football. Today we are going to dial in and talk a little bit about the college ranks. Let's waste no time. I don't know where you want to start, but I want to start out in West Virginia, where I just got to say, Geno Smith, you, sir, are the real deal.
Absolutely. All I heard was he's putting up video game numbers against awful defenses, high school defenses. He's going to go down to Austin, Texas, and he's not even going to be on the Heisman radar after Saturday night. That's all I kept hearing last week. Well, I think he's atop that Heisman radar. What say you?
I think that he pretty much slammed the door behind any other competitor that's in the running for the Heisman Trophy. I mean, this is a guy that is just putting up those Madden-like numbers week in, week out. Does not matter the opposition. He just goes down there and he does his big thing. West Virginia, legit. And Geno Smith, legit. He is going to be somebody's number one pick this coming season.
Absolutely. They went into Austin, Texas, which I can tell you is not an easy place to play, against a very good Texas team, number 11 in the nation at the time, and they beat them in their house. And they went out and they put up 41 points on what people said was a good defense that would stop them, which was because it was not a high school defense. But the fact of the matter is that West Virginia offense is full of speedy guys. Tavon Austin, Geno Smith, the running back, Bluey, had a great game, over 200 yards. Real deal, West Virginia.
Yeah, and it's one thing for him to put up those kind of numbers at his own house, and you will say coming in, well, Texas probably didn't have the best defense, and they said that, well, you know, the Longhorns' D was vulnerable. I say it doesn't matter because, as you alluded to, they're on the road. They're doing this in that hostile environment. Doesn't bat a lash. Just continues to go out there, does his thing. Now, the other big game for me this weekend outside of Notre Dame.
There was like a million big games this weekend.
Yeah, but for me, the one that I was watching closely, Florida LSU. LSU is who I thought that they were, and I don't think that there's any question anymore that this is not a team deserving to be in the top 5, let alone or the top 10 at this point. If it were up to me, they'd be ranked somewhere in the mid-teens, perhaps on the verge of a 20 at this point.
Wow.
Shady performances 3 weeks in a row, one of which was by a sub-BCS team. Towson, what's up, local team? And LSU Tigers, I'm sorry, you're just not as good as you think you are.
Jeez, mid-teens?
Mid-teens.
From number 4 to mid-teens.
Mid-teens.
You're mean.
Oh, they put up 6 points. 6.
That's true. I mean, I still have them in my top 10. They sneak in the back door. We'll talk about our rankings later, but the fact is Florida has beaten A&M in A&M. Now they pretty much dominate. I don't know, dominate, but they pulled away from a very good LSU team, despite what you want to say. Florida is a surprise national title contender this year, at least in my eyes. I did not think they were going to be this good.
The Gators looking strong, but then the old ball coach down there, South Carolina, this is a team, I think that the official rankings, they put them at number 3 this year. They could easily go as high as number 2 and flip-flop with Oregon in my book. I think that the Gamecocks are seriously that good. Could be a Gamecock finale there in the BCS title game.
It could be. They are a very good team. I had them edging out Florida. I did not have them spanking Florida. I did not have them taking them out behind the woodshed and beating the crap out of them. It was like, holy, I was watching the other games that were on, Notre Dame, Miami, Nebraska, Ohio State, and I flip over and it's 21-0. It was crazy, and they ended up beating them 35-7, I believe. South Carolina is the real deal. Steve Spurrier has shown that he can do it not just down there in Florida. He can do it in South Carolina. He's created, for this year at least, a very strong national title contender.
Yeah, and we spoke with Titus O'Neil about his time playing under Steve Spurrier during his college days at Florida. Had nothing but good things to say about the old ball coach, the old fun and gun. And, you know, it didn't translate to the pros. It obviously didn't work here in Washington, but Steve Spurrier, honestly,
people need to let that go. Like, seriously, I typed out fun and gun last year on Twitter last year. I don't remember why, and I got about 40 tweets back. Don't you dare mention that. Those are 4-letter words as far as we're concerned. People need to let that go.
We're just evoking emotion here.
Holy cow,
We're
it was
just
like 10 years
evoking
ago.
Steve Spurrier didn't translate into the NFL, has a heck of a college career, a heck of a resume there. Will go down in history as one of the greatest college coaches of all time. I mean, this guy is just built for the NCAA.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a guy, he took Florida to multiple national title games, had a Heisman Trophy winner, won a national title. South Carolina, I mean, I've been watching college football ever since I was little, and I may not be as old as you or as old as you look, but the fact is I've never known them to be a national title contender whatsoever, and now here they are.
Here they are, but here's what I'm thinking. How much fun is it for kids getting recruited by Steve Spurrier? I would imagine when he goes to house calls and he visits with these families, as loose and as fun as his personality is, I'm sure he sits down there with his little draw. He's like, well, we're going to have a lot of fun with you in the offense. I can't guarantee that you're going to start, but I guarantee that we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have a chance to be national title contenders. You're going to have a chance to do big things here with the Gamecocks party on. That's the kind of impression I get with
Is that
Steve
how he
Spurrier.
talks? I've never talked to him. Is that how he really talks?
I mean, it may not be as Texas-ish as that, but he definitely has a drawl on him.
I was thinking, like a mentally challenged Southern person.
No.
That's how you made him sound.
It is not Forrest Gump.
I wasn't thinking of that.
It is definitely not Forrest Gump. But, I mean, I just think that he would be a lot of fun to play.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Players loved him. Fans, I mean, he didn't put the W's on the board here in Washington. And, again, I'm trying to let it go.
Great college coach. You couldn't have said it any better.
No doubt. Absolutely a wonderful college coach. Now, you're talking about a woodshed. I'd be remiss if during this here college segment I didn't bring up old Notre Dame. Still undefeated at Soldier Field all time. Just trounces the U.
I was wondering, because it wasn't played in Miami. It wasn't played in Notre Dame. Did Miami know where the game was supposed to be played at?
I don't think
I was
they
just
did.
wondering.
I believe
maybe they did get that memo.
Those were replacement players.
Is that what it was?
41-3. Notre Dame could
Goodness.
absolutely do no wrong. Just move the ball. It will. Defense shut down the U. What more can you say?
Catholics over convicts, I guess.
And here's the funny thing, though, and this is a tweet that I put out on Sunday. That game finished third in the rankings. It was going head-to-head with West Virginia, Texas, and Nebraska and Ohio State. And would you believe that your Huskers and the Buckeyes, by a wide margin, was the most watched game in America Saturday night?
Is that a surprise?
It was.
Was there another game?
It was absolutely.
I didn't even know there was.
I would think that Notre Dame would bring it strong on NBC, but perhaps because it was a blowout, everybody tuned over to watch the Huskers.
Well, it's not like the Husker game was that close after a while.
No, but
apparently we don't play defense there anymore, and we just like to give Christmas presents to the opposing team when we're on offense.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about that game. I didn't get a chance to see.
I'm done. Let's go to the next game.
Moving on.
I think they forgot the game was in Columbus. Good grief.
What else did you take away from Saturday then, man? I'll put the ball in your court.
Honestly, I felt like it was separation Saturday. Up to this point, there weren't that many great games. Kansas State, Oklahoma, looking back on it, was a big game, but at the time we didn't know it would be. Kansas State's now top 5. Oklahoma's eking back into the top 10, but you had all these top 10 games. You had all these top 20 games. Also, Oregon, Washington was a ranked, 2 ranked teams, even though, Oregon spanked them pretty good. But to me, it was separation Saturday, pushing out some of these teams that really didn't belong, like a Georgia, like an LSU. Texas was trying to eke back into the top 10. They got pushed back out, and you kind of see who really belongs in this national title picture. What about yourself?
Yeah, you bring up Kansas State. They looked awfully impressive against Kansas this weekend. I got a chance to tune in. Obviously, I'm a homer for Notre Dame, so you see the Charlie Weiss, Dane Christ reunion there in Kansas, and things are going about as well there as they did in South Bend. Kansas State just looking awfully impressive, and Brandon Banks has got to be awfully proud about now.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't know how much you know. I grew up hating Kansas State, being a Nebraska boy, being a Nebraska player. That team was terrible. There was 116 teams. My dad told me when Bill Snyder took over, and they were the 116th best team, so they were the worst team in college football. He brought them all the way into being a top 5, top 10 team. They were undefeated one year, lost in their the Big 12 championship game, got upset by Texas A&M. Then he retires, and they just slowly, steadily decline. He sees this, so he takes over coaching again, and they've just slowly, steadily inclined again. I think he is one of the best coaches in college football history that nobody knows about, just simply because I don't think they've ever won a Big 12 title. No, they did. They beat Oklahoma one year. I don't think they've ever won a national title. He's never had those top draft picks, which is, to me, is just more impressive as to how good of a coach he is. And it irks me to say this. Gosh, Kansas State. But the fact of the matter is he's one of the most underrated football coaches in history, because you look at what happened before he came, when he left, and when he came back. And it's very impressive.
Well, and let's talk about this, because what you said about that incline, it didn't exactly happen overnight. And that tells me that he's building the program the right way, and he's doing it in an honest manner, and things are just going well for the Wildcats out there. What more can you say? Honest guy out there in Kansas State, huh?
To be honest, one of those up years was a Nebraska down year when I was there, and they ran up the score on us. So I don't know. I don't know how much of a personal fan I am of his. He ran up that score pretty good, and Pelini was our D coordinator at the time, and he wasn't thrilled. And he let him know about it, and I love Pelini for that. But, as far as a football coach, there's no question how good he is. And I don't know Bill Snyder. Maybe he's a great guy. But you didn't have to run up the score that night.
Well,
I don't appreciate it. I'm still mad.
Shucks.
8 years ago, 9 years ago, whatever.
You know who's a sometimes good time, sometimes good guy, sometimes bad guy? Vince McMahon.
Yeah,
turn the tables a little bit.
Is that our transition?
That would be the transition.
I like that.
You don't necessarily need to reference it every time I do something clever like that.
Are we not doing our top 5 in Heisman? Are we just bolting on that?
I mean, I was just looking at the clock, and I felt that there was a natural
Let's do it real quick. Come on, let's have fun.
All right,
real
bringing
quick.
it back. We're breaking.
We don't have to analyze
etiquette.
it that much. Well,
Heck?
I announced it because I spent some time on this, man. I did some research.
You spent as much time on this as I did the 2-minute or the final drive on.
Well, let's just go through real quick, then we'll talk a little wrestling.
All right,
talk some
here
wrestling.
we go. Number 1 for you, Adam Carriker. Who you got? Yeah, no question there. Alabama. Number 2. Do I even need to ask?
Oregon.
Me too.
I thought about South Carolina, but that's just too big of a jump at this point. So I'm going to go with Oregon.
Flip a coin. If they keep showing like they're showing, I think in another 2 games they could get that number 2 spot regardless of how Oregon does. But for me, it does go Oregon 2, South Carolina 3.
Well, South Carolina plays a much tougher team, so if they keep beating, they got to jump them eventually.
Absolutely. Who you got at the 4 spot?
Florida, who before the season started, I mean, they struggled in their first game, which was not a great team, and I didn't think they'd be that good, but here they are, number 4.
I'm actually going to put West Virginia and Geno Smith in the 4 spot. I mean, what this guy is continuing to do, what that program is continuing to do, tells me that these guys are legit. And until I'm proven otherwise, these are this is a team that, again, at the end of the season, could be in that BCS title picture.
Absolutely.
And rounding out your top 5?
I've got West Virginia at 5. I went ahead and I just did a top 10. I'll run down real quick. I got K-State at 6, Notre Dame 7, Ohio State 8, LSU 9, at 9, and Florida State at 10.
I agree.
I still like me some Florida State. I'm upset they lost. But hey.
I'd put Notre Dame at 6, but that's picking with my heart, honestly.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I think it'd be a toss-up if they played Kansas State. So.
Yeah. Well, that'd be a good game. I would actually really like to see that. Another challenge for Brian Kelly. But what he's able to do with that program in his 3rd season, really a make-or-break year for the Irish, and they've taken the ball and they're running with it in a big, big way.
Well, he was hired from Cincinnati. Who was Cincinnati? I didn't even know they had a football team, and they went to the Sugar Bowl, and they were unbeaten at the time. Of course, Tebow and Florida killed them, but they just didn't have the talent. But he's been a proven coach in the past, and I think we'll just save our Heisman picks for next week. We'll just continue to tease the Heisman. It's Geno Smith, people.
Yeah, no doubt. Like I said,
no
he shut the door behind the other contenders.
Absolutely.
Speaking of shutting the doors, let's talk about Vince McMahon.
I love it. So smooth.
I mean, Vince McMahon, he's on Raw again this week, and, love him or hate him, he's a guy like John Cena that the show it has a little bit more of an energy to it when he's around. The guy is 67 years old at this point, still captivating that young WWE universe. I don't know how you feel about this. Well, you know what? Matter of fact, before I tell you my opinion, Vince McMahon, time for him to step away from the spotlight, or is it okay for WWE to keep trotting him in every now and again?
Vince McMahon needs to never go away. To me, he is the Simpsons of the WWE. And what I mean by that is the Simpsons have been going on forever. And they're just going to keep going and keep going and keep going. And the reason is he was there in day one that night in Madison Square Garden in 1993. This is his company. This is his baby. He is the man who took it to new heights, bought it from his father, Vince McMahon Sr., took it to new heights. He has made it the multi-million, billion-dollar industry that it is. and people just love to watch him. Now, that you don't see him for every few months, and he comes out. But the fact of the matter is, he is a staple of this show. He's not like those TV shows that come and go all the time. There's a new one every other season. He is The Simpsons, and he just never needs to go away, in my opinion.
Here's the thing. I love me some Vinnie Mac. I love him for what he is. I love him for being the businessman that he is and bringing wrestling to the heights that he is. I think that by trotting him out every now and again, you're hurting the progress of WWE moving forward. It's the same argument as WWE not being able to get anybody other than John Cena or the same cast of characters in that title picture. It is time to start developing some new talent. Maybe they need to go tap Shane McMahon to come back. He's a little bit younger. He's a guy in his 40s. Had a memorable run during the Attitude Era. Maybe it's time to say, hey, Shane, it's time to come back home. But you can't keep going back to the past and expect to move forward because he's 67 years old. The guy's in phenomenal shape, but how much longer is he going to be around? What kind of shape is this company going to be in if they don't breed new talent? And Vince McMahon, love him or hate him, 67 years old, been around since you said day one. It's time for Vince McMahon to just kind of go away. He's a gimmick at this point. And I kind of take the same approach with Mick Foley and all the other legends that they trot out from time to time. Love the guys, but they are from a different era. Let's not trot them out nearly as frequently, if ever.
I would agree with the other wrestlers, such as Mick Foley, because it's like football players. Football players can't play forever, and we know that about wrestlers. He is not a wrestler. He has wrestled from time to time, but he is the owner. We're always going to know that he's the owner until the day he passes on. So why not? Why not? You need to have in a football locker room, you need to have the veterans, you need to have the staples, and you need to have the new young bloods, young talent, the rookies, and the second, third year guys. That's how the WWE is. They're constantly bringing in new wrestlers. John Cena is not going to be around forever. But the one guy who can stay around because he is not a wrestler, and we know that he can stay around, is Vince McMahon because he owns a company, and that's not going to change.
Well, he is
a staple, my friend.
Here's the thing, though. When you see Vince McMahon, what do you think about? You think about Bret Hart. You think about Stone Cold Steve Austin. You think about The Undertaker. You think about Mick Foley. You're thinking about an era that is long gone. You're not thinking about Jack Swagger. You're not thinking about Daniel Bryan. You're not thinking about John Cena or Kofi Kingston. You're thinking about the product past. And so you're bringing in Vince McMahon, and that's kind of pouring cold water on your current product. You're never going to be able to recreate that synergy of the Monday Night Wars era. And Vince McMahon, love the guy. He is a remembrance, a reminder of that era. None of those other guys are still there. Therefore, he's a reminder. People are going to see him. They may feel a little bit left out with the current product. Not that the current product is bad. It's just completely different. And it's, at this point, almost like oil and water.
See, I think it's different because you're putting the finishing line on the Monday Night Wars on the Attitude Era. The finishing line is way back in 1993 when he was an announcer, when we didn't even know he was the owner. So these wrestlers, they come and they go. They have a starting point. They have an ending point. Vince McMahon, it's like the universe. When did the universe begin? Nobody knows. It was just there. He's just always been there. And because he's always been there and he's not associated with any particular time, he's associated with all of them. He is basically the epitome of the WWE, just like Hogan was the guy that took it. Austin was the guy that resurrected it. He is the guy that is the constant staple. And then you bring in new wrestlers and the new blood and the new faces, and that's how you get the new turnover, the new fans. But you need the staple, which is Vince McMahon, because it can't be a wrestler, because a wrestler can't stay around forever.
But again, do you see my point, though?
I do.
You don't equate Vince McMahon with John Cena, and you don't equate him with AJ, the current general manager. You don't equate him with Titus O'Neil. You don't equate him with anybody on the current roster. So when you see him, you equate him with years past, and it's a real mind meld, man. It's just wrong.
Well, you know what? That makes my point even more, because that means he hasn't been doing stuff enough in the current Raw era, because he needs to be out there. I'm not saying every week. I'm not even saying a lot. I'm just saying more. That way you associate him. He doesn't have to be out there a ton, maybe once a month, maybe once every other month, so that you associate him. But he is that constant staple. He's never not going to be the owner, and we all know that. In fact, I just find myself waiting for him to come out when he hasn't been out in a while.
I don't know. I just
That's just my opinion. We can agree to disagree.
and we're going to have to. I just think that he's living in the past. But, real quick before we wrap up the segment, though, as long as we're living in the past, I think that we should revisit something that
Something negative.
we haven't visited since this past summer, when a lot of people may not have had the opportunity to hear Fourth and Pain. And why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about our top wrestlers of all time? We're going to talk a lot about the guys that we just mentioned, a lot of the guys that we equate with a lot of the guys that we equate with Vince McMahon, guys that aren't necessarily on that current roster. And I'd be surprised, Adam, if on your top five you do have a guy that's on the current roster. I can tell you right now, my top five is nobody current.
Well, why don't you go first? I go first all the time. Why don't you go first?
All right, number one of all time.
No. Start at five. You got to start at five.
Start at five?
Yes.
Triple H. This is Shawn Michaels' right-hand man. The Game there helped launch the Attitude Era. Just a pivotal role in Degeneration X. He's my 5 seed.
Yeah, much respect for Triple H. He would be in my top 10 if I expanded it to top 10. I actually had a tie, and I believe I had this tie until the match happened. And this is not just some thing I made up because there was going to be a match. It's actually always been this way. I had a tie between The Rock and Cena. I've always had that tie. And a lot of people don't like that I have Cena this high, but the fact of the matter is he has carried the WWE for 10 years. Nobody else. Randy Orton is really good. I can't even think of who would be number 3 at this time. Undertaker shows up once a year, does his thing, and then he lets somebody else carry it. But he's tied with The Rock. And The Rock, it's hard to say, overshadowed by Steve Austin, but Steve Austin on just about everybody's list is going to be a notch higher. So he was slightly overshadowed. If it wasn't for that, he would probably be way higher because he would have been the face of that generation, but let's face it, Austin was. And by virtue of Rock beating Cena at WrestleMania, I went with The Rock at 5. But to me, it was a tie up until that point.
Interesting. I'm very surprised that somebody current made your list.
No, they didn't make my list. They almost made the list.
All right.
Very close.
Very close. Shawn Michaels is my 4 seed. The bad boy of pro wrestling, again, hand in hand with Triple H, pushed the envelope further than it had gone before, what with his penthouse spread and all of his in-ring shenanigans before, and quite honestly, before he found Jesus, then he stepped away and kind of cleaned up his act for the second coming of Degeneration X. Yes, that was a pun. But he is my 4 seed.
Nice. My number 4 is the man with the streak, 20-0, the man who was there in the very beginning, battled Hogan, battled Austin, has battled the guys in the modern era, Mr. Undertaker, the Undertaker.
3 seed for me, Sting, played an intricate role in lifting WCW to new heights during the Monday Night War era. His feud with the NWO was absolutely epic. I loved it, and I love the fact that feud culminated right here in Washington, D.C. The long-awaited match between Sting and Hulk Hogan was at the Verizon Center, at that time known as the MCI Center.
Honestly, that's what Sting's actually my 3rd favorite wrestler, but my favorite wrestlers list is different than this list. Maybe we'll have to do a favorite wrestlers list next week. He's my 3rd favorite wrestler. But my 3rd wrestler on this list is Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, the guy. I mean, he's still wrestling to this day. I haven't seen him in a couple months. Maybe he's finally done, but the guy's been doing it for 40 years, more world championships than anybody else. I will concede one of the top 5 best on the microphone ever. There you go, Chad Dukes. And I've just had too many people tell me that he was, and I finally just relented. Everybody else must be right. And the guy was he's one of the best of all time, number 3 in my book.
Well, the limousine riding, jet flying, wheeling, dealing son of a gun. I mean, everybody knows that phrase, man. 2 seed for me, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Adam, to me, he is our generation's Hulk Hogan. Every time, think about this, every time we've given away the Fourth and Pain Championship belt, we ask, who's your favorite wrestler? What do you remember about wrestling growing up? Inevitably, they always say Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Every one of them. I can't think of one that hasn't. Every single person always says Stone Cold Steve Austin. Even the people we haven't given the belt to, I'll ask them. I'll just be chatting wrestling, and it's always Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock. It's people of that nature.
Iconic, man. That's my 2 seed. Who do you have?
I have Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, it was either 1 or 2 with him. You can probably figure out who 1 is at this point. But honestly, wrestling right before he came and The Rock came out and the Monday Night Wars happened, it was not popular. Not many people were watching it. Not many people were into it. I was in middle school. Nobody was talking about it. Out comes Stone Cold. Out comes The Rock. Out comes NWO. All of a sudden, you are hitting the highlight, the high times of pro wrestling history. And Stone Cold is the one person above everyone else who made that happen and brought at least everyone in my middle school and high school back to watching professional wrestling. He is the man that resurrected professional wrestling, if you will.
And for me, the one seed, the top guy, the guy that nobody is ever going to be able to top, Bushwhacker Luke. Him and his brother.
I was going to do that. I was.
You were going to go Bushwhacker Luke?
Well, I was going to go another no name that nobody knew. You beat me to it.
Well, that's what you get for let me go first.
Great minds think alike.
No, in all honesty, it's El Dandy. I mean, who are we to doubt?
We're still waiting for that Bret Hart match. When's it happening?
You got the reference. I'm proud of you.
That's actually who I was going to go with, was El Dandy.
Oh, God. Oh, man, I would have marked out huge for that. Number one, seriously, though, of all time, Hulk Hogan. I mean, this is a guy that transpired pro wrestling. This is a guy that goes well beyond the sport, beyond the entertainment. I mean, every Tom, Dick, and Harry in America knows the name Hulk Hogan. You can say that about no other wrestler. You can't even say that about Stone Cold Steve Austin. My grandmother knows who Hulk Hogan is, for God's sakes. And for what he did with this sport and continues to do, he's the number one, and by a wide, wide margin.
I would not say a wide, wide margin. I would say he's number one on my list, but I wouldn't say a wide margin. He is the man who basically made everyone start watching pro wrestling. He is the man that took it mainstream. He is the man that made it popular. WrestleMania 3 was kind of the ultimate launching point when he picks up Andre the Giant, tears every muscle in his back. And to this day, I think he's had about 14, 15 back surgeries just because of that one move, tore every muscle in his lat.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, like you said, it doesn't matter if it's your grandma or, a 10-year-old kid. Just about everybody knows who Hulk Hogan is. And to me, that he edges out Stone Cold Steve Austin for that reason.
Just edges him out. Wow.
Like if I had to, yeah, just edges him out. I was trying to come up with something clever. I got nothing. He just barely ekes him out.
I mean, Stone Cold didn't have his own cartoon. He didn't have his own, yellow and red Hulkamania apparel. Granted, he had the like hotcake selling Austin 316 shirts, but they weren't nearly as identifiable as that Hulkamania, that trademark yellow and red. His own theme song, cartoons, serials, movies, TV shows. Remember Thunder Bay? I mean, this is Hulk Hogan at his finest, man.
I do, and I agree with you. But here is why it's not a wide margin. If it had not come out of the mouth of Vince McMahon himself, it probably would have been a wide margin. But Vince McMahon himself, the guy who created this, and didn't create this, but took it to the next level, has been there since day one, has been the mastermind. The guy who's been there and seen the T-shirt sales, he said the T-shirt sales were through the roof in the Attitude Era. He said he called Stone Cold Steve Austin the greatest superstar of all time. So if the guy who knows more about this business than anybody would put Stone Cold at number one, I have a hard time just saying it's a wide margin, with my opinion, putting Hogan over Stone Cold.
Well,
so I say edges out.
What do you guys think? Leave a comment below. Let us know your top 5 favorite wrestler, or your top 5 biggest wrestlers of all time. Completely different. Don't pick with your heart, pick with your head.
Well, we're going to do a favorites here, maybe next week or the week after. We're going to do our top 5 favorites, because to me it's different. Because my number one wrestler doesn't even make the top 5 greatest of all time, and it's just for the simple fact that I would have liked to have seen him wrestle longer. I'd like to watch him forever.
La Parka?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now you're just being ridiculous.
A little bit. But we are fresh out of time for the day.
Can I do something real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Since I didn't write it down, but I got through number 10. Let's see if I can remember off the top of my head. I got my top 10 here.
Go for it.
Let's see if I can remember. At 6 is Cena. I believe at 7 I have Shawn Michaels. At 8 I have Bret Hart. 9 I have Sting. 10 I have Triple H.
That's a good list.
That is a great list, and a lot of your top 5 was just in my top 10, and I'm sure if you did your top 10, the ones you didn't list in my 5 would just be in 10. So
vice versa. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, now we're done. Sorry.
Absolutely.
I love talking wrestling.
Psychosis, man. Psychosis is a sleeper pick. He's going to be on number 9.
What did you? You're ridiculous.
And Stevie Ray,
Hashtag
8 seed.
pillar of honesty. Yes, because he's your least favorite wrestler of all time. I know this to be true.
Oh,
Jeez.
So on that note, this is Fourth and Pain.
We're not doing our bottom 5.
I'm Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for believing in our weirdness.
I'm Adam Carriker, largest arms on the D-line. Peace out, home skillet.